Hi, my name is Sarah Manzone. I'm originally from New York. I went to college at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. As James discussed, one of the goals of investing is making a profit. Let's say with our Nike stock example, you think that they are going to see outsized growth because maybe they're entering a new market. Let's just say they haven't had sales or business in China before, and they're now entering China as a new market. So it's a whole new market where they can get sales and increase their growth. So maybe you like it for that reason, or maybe you think they have a new sneaker launching and you think there's going to be a lot of people buying that product, and so you're excited about that. Or maybe you think that they have new partnerships with pro athletes that you think will propel their sales. So there's a few reasons why you might like the company, but of course, we can always find ways to argue for our investment, but we always have to consider the risks as well. And so there's a few risks that we're going to walk through today that you should always have in mind when making any investment. Okay, so the first risk we're going to discuss today is financial risk. And essentially what that boils down to is how a company manages its money. So if we're using Nike again as our example, a few things that Nike could do to be a prudent manager of its money would be investing in its manufacturing facilities, making sure they're up to date, running efficiently. It could be investing in new technologies to make sure its sneakers are the latest technology, or its performance clothing that people use for workouts is sort of the latest cutting edge product quality for consumers to buy. And the other thing you can even argue is that its partnerships that it invests in with pro athletes to sort of advertise and promote the product would be a prudent investment for the company itself to make. However, when you are investing in companies, you always have to keep in mind that what they do with their money is up to their discretion. And so there's always financial risk that, let's say, Nike decides to invest in something outside of its business, which obviously wouldn't be good for shareholders. So something to keep in mind, and one of the first risks that we always look at when thinking about buying a stock. The second risk we're going to discuss is business risk. So taking our Nike example further, one of the risks that comes to mind is around product quality risk. So let's say Nike put out a new basketball sneaker. They would never want someone playing basketball in those sneakers and the rubber sole falling apart or the shoelaces breaking. But then you also have business risk around competition. So if Nike released a sneaker 2 months ago, and let's say Adidas comes out with one this month, perhaps the Nike sales go down because people are now buying the Adidas sneaker, and the value of the Nike sneakers goes down. But another one you have to think about is just in the overall industry that it's in. So if you think about Nike, we buy sneakers, we buy clothing from them. A lot of our purchases are what is called discretionary. So they're not necessary purchases. Whereas if you think about the stock of a grocer, Kroger being a large national grocer, people always need to buy food. So that is inherently more defensive than Nike. And so those are 3 examples of business risks: product quality, competition, and the industry that it's in. Okay, so the next risk we're going to discuss is regulatory risk, which all companies come in contact with in some shape or form. And so if you think about regulatory risk, it usually revolves around existing or proposed legislation that change the way that you do business. And so with Nike, I think one of the easiest examples is you think about its manufacturing footprint. And so one of the things Nike has to think about when it's looking at manufacturing facilities, both domestically and abroad, is taxes related to their manufacturing footprint. And so last year, the year before, we saw the US government raise taxes on foreign manufacturing, which basically means that if Nike is producing more of its product in China, it gets taxed at a higher level than it would if it were to produce its product in the US. And so that's a business decision that Nike has to make around increasing its footprint domestically versus abroad. And of course, legislations are constantly changing. So you kind of need to think about what the current environment looks like and what it could look like in the future. The last risk we're going to discuss is macro risk. How is the global economy doing? How is the domestic economy doing? And how does that impact the business that we're investing in? So with Nike, it's pretty prevalent right now, and it touches upon what we discussed in the business risk section, but the Nike's products are not necessities. They are at our discretion to buy. We'd like to buy them, but we don't need to buy them. Versus if you think about a grocer, again, we need to buy food to survive. So if you think about the economy right now, and it's in a bit of a pullback, people will shift their spending and maybe reduce their discretionary spending and keep up their level and perhaps increase their spending on needs such as food, such as healthcare, et cetera. And so that's always something that you need to think about, whether the economy is currently in some state of a pullback or not. But there's always that risk, and you never know when it's going to happen. And so that's one of the big risks that we always think about. And so hopefully you think about your investment from a risk perspective at a high level, at macro, drilling down to the business and regulatory risks as well.